one species rarely live alone. They commonly interact with populations of other species, making a community. And this interaction between different populations in an area is called community ecology. Even in your own daily life, you interact with your pets or
creepy spiders that come out of your walls,
plants in your yard or city, and thousands of microbes that live in and on you. One important measure in community ecology is species diversity, which is a measure of the number of different species found in a given area. Areas like the Arctic tundra have low species diversity due to limited resources. But coral reefs and tropical rainforests have so many species, it's quite possible that the vast majority are still unknown to science. In this video, we will be going over the various interactions between members of differing species, characteristics of communities, and finally, how communities adapt to abrupt change. So let's get started. Predator-prey relations are an example of a community interaction whereby the predator consumes another organism or parts of another organism for nutrients. Yes, even herbivorous animals are predators, just to plants instead. Lynx and hare predator-prey populations have been studied for over 200 years. There seems to be a pattern with predators and prey. Any increase or decrease in prey will cause a lag of increase or decrease in the predator. Thus, predator populations follow and are dependent on prey populations. The relationships between predator-prey have developed a coevolution where the predator gets more effective at capture and the prey is better at evading predation. Let's look at these defense mechanisms against predation and herbivory. These defense mechanisms can be either mechanical, chemical, physical, or behavioral. Mechanical defenses include hardened turtle shells or plants with thorns. These can cause physical pain to predators or prevent the prey from being eaten. Chemical defenses often include toxins that can harm or kill predators if they consume the prey. This is seen in many poisonous mushrooms, plants, frogs, and insects. The poison dart frog can transmit the toxins through its skin as enough to cause harm by touch. Camouflage is another more physical mechanism that can cause prey to blend into their environment, allowing them to avoid detection. Other organisms are brightly colorful and can produce toxic chemicals, bite, or sting, telling predators to stay away, indicating, "I taste awful." So while being brightly colored or having stingers or strong bites help to detract predation, some harmless species have evolved mechanisms to mimic these defenses called mimicry. Mimicry comes in two forms. First is Batesian mimicry, in which a harmless organism mimics the warning coloration of a harmful and colorful organisms. This is common in insects, especially many flies mimicking bees, hornets, and wasps. Another example is the unpleasant-tasting monarch butterfly, which is mimicked by the viceroy butterfly, which does not actively produce a foul taste. And you have to ask yourself, who the is out there tasting butterflies? Now, since resources are limited within a given habitat, it is common that multiple species compete for the same resource. All species have an ecological niche in an ecosystem. A niche is basically a role that a species plays in their ecosystem, specifically how they acquire resources and interact with other species. But realistically, with competition for resources, sometimes niches overlap. This is called the competitive exclusion principle, which posits that no two species can occupy the same niche in a given habitat. One species will eventually outcompete the other, making the loser die out. One well-studied example of this is seen in Paramecium species in a test tube environment. Paramecium aurelia and Paramecium caudatum both grew successfully in their respective tubes with predictable growth curves. However, when both species of equal population size were added to the same test tube, Paramecium aurelia outcompeted Paramecium caudatum, thus leading the latter's extinction in the test tube. Competitive exclusion principle is not always inevitable. If two species with similar niches occur in an ecosystem, one or both species can evolve to make use of different resources, habitats, or feeds during different times of the day. This is called resource partitioning and is one of many factors that drive natural selection. Of course, predator-prey and competitive relationships aren't the only forms of interactions within a community. There are also symbioses, or symbiotic relationships, which are close interactions between individuals of different species over extended periods of time. There are three recognized symbiotic relationships. The first one is commensalism, where one species benefits from the close interaction of another, but the other species is neither benefited nor harmed. So when an elephant or other heavy animal walks across the African savanna, its body weight depresses into the ground, revealing invertebrate prey. And many birds benefit by this exposure of food, but the elephant is simply going on doing what, I guess, elephants do. Bird nests on trees and clownfish and sea anemone are another example of commensalism. Bird nests are too light to affect branches, and clownfish benefit by hiding in the stinging tentacles of the sea anemone because the clownfish is not affected by those stinging cells. Most of the microbes living in your body simply take advantage of the warm, nutrient-rich environment, and you simply are just not aware. Another type of symbiotic relationship is mutualism, which is a long-term interaction that benefits both species. Termites utilize special bacterial and protozoan gut microorganisms to degrade cellulose in plants. Cellulose makes up plant cell walls. Lichens are a mutualistic relationship between a photosynthetic algae or bacterium and a fungus. The photosynthetic agent provides sugar to both organisms, and the fungus prevents the photosynthetic organism from drying out. We also have many gut microflora that aid in the access of nutrients and breakdown of many of our foods, and some even assist with our immune system. Finally, I would argue that a mammalian pet and you would act as a mutualistic relationship. You give it food and home, and in return, you get a nice little good boy. Finally, parasitism, which occurs when one species lives on in another organism, in other words, their host, and they derive nutrients from them. Parasites do not usually kill their host, at least not immediately, but the nutrients stolen can oftentimes weaken the host. The reason for this is that the parasite needs its host for reproduction. Examples of parasites include tapeworms, which can derive from eating raw or undercooked pork or being exposed to poor sanitation where tapeworm eggs may reside. Plasmodium falciparum causes malaria, which utilizes liver and blood cells for reproduction. Really, any organism that causes disease could be labeled as a parasite since it's using the host for resources and reproduction. This includes viruses, as well as certain bacteria, fungi, protists, and bad boyfriends and girlfriends. I now want to segue into the characteristics of communities. You see, communities are complex and ever-changing. Communities are characterized by the types of number of species present and how these communities change over time. First, communities generally have what's called a foundational species, which are also known as ecological dominants and are considered the bedrock species of a community, having the greatest influence on the structure of that community. Typically, they are primary producers such as plants, algae, and cyanobacteria. In the forest of Kentucky, foundational species include oak, maple, and hickory species, as these groups dictate the way the rest of the community falls. Coral reefs are the foundational species mostly because of the algae that reside inside of them, but the calcareous skeleton allows many organisms to hide and live within that reef. Then there is keystone species, whose presence is integral to upholding the ecological community. Named for a keystone, or stone used in an archway that holds the arch together, their existence, that is, the species, is necessary for the survival of many other species. Examples of keystone species are beavers, who make habitat for many other types of organisms, as well as wolves, whose predatory behavior causes shifts in their prey's behavior, thereby affecting the plant life and even the flow of rivers and streams. Finally, intertidal sea stars seem to be a keystone species, as their absence is followed by an increase in mussels, their prey, causing a reduction in resources, thereby reducing biodiversity. Communities change constantly due to environmental disturbances, and these are events that change the ecosystem, such as wildfires and storms, earthquakes, human interventions, and climate change. And when communities are stable, they are said to be in equilibrium. When a disturbance occurs, it may or may not be able to return to that equilibrium. Succession is a series of community changes that occur after a disturbance, where each change brings about new species and a disappearance of others. There are two forms of succession. First is primary succession, which occurs when newly formed land develops and is colonized by living things. This is common in new islands and communities that were just completely destroyed, like a volcano wiping out a forest, including all the important soil layers. And this was the case of Mount St. Helens in Washington State in 1980. The islands of Hawaii are relatively young in geological history. These were formed by volcanic activity below the ocean, spewing magma in the water, creating mountains, eventually becoming islands. These newly formed islands are made up of bare rock, and the geological forces of erosion and water help form the nutrient-rich areas where pioneer species take root. Over time, these pioneer species are replaced by larger species that utilize the soil mix with the original rock and organic nutrients from decaying organisms. Eventually, this will lead to equilibrium. But secondary succession is much more common and occurs when an existing community undergoes a disturbance and the ecosystem goes through a series of steps to restore that equilibrium. A classic example is a forest that underwent a forest fire. The soil from the prior community is still there, providing a foundation of nutrients for succession to begin. Typically, the pioneer species include annual plants like grasses and wildflowers, and then intermediate species such as young trees and short shrubs start to take over. Finally, a climax community where mature tree species reside help the community reach equilibrium. And once that equilibrium is achieved, the community will remain until a new disturbance occurs. So now that we have covered the biotic components of ecology, it is now time to look at the abiotic or non-living components that help define ecosystems. So in our next video, we will look at ecosystem ecology and review the diversity of biomes on planet Earth.